Hello and welcome to the Young Texas and Reformed podcast. I'm your host, Taylor DeSoto. In this episode, I want to dismantle the claim that men like Mark Ward make, which has become prolific, that the King James is written in Old English. Now, men like Mark Ward know better than this, I would hope. But we're going to settle this dispute in this video. It's going to be a short and sweet video. I'm probably going to make the title very clickbaity so that more people see it, but we're just going to compare Old English, Middle English, and Modern English. And we're going to just disprove that the King James is written in Old English. So let's dive right in. So before us here, I have on my screen Beowulf, the Old English version, and this is Old English. I could try to read it, but I would fail because it's an entirely different language. It's more close to German, some sort of Germanic language, than it is English. So, I'm going to embarrass myself and attempt to decipher, even just phonetically sound it out. So, huet, we Gardena in Gerodagum, Peodis. See, I can't even read this. I don't even know what these letters are. Now, I would have to actually learn the letters. I'd have to learn the sounds the letters make. And I think this is proof that Old English is indeed a different language. If the King James Version was written in what we see here, then absolutely the King James would need a revision. The fact is, I can't read this. I can barely sound it out. It is a foreign language to me. So now let's go a step further to Middle English, which if the King James was written in Old English, then, and we can, somewhat understand the King James, we should definitely be able to understand the Middle English of Chaucer. So let's take a look at Middle English from the Canterbury Tales, just the general prologue. It says, "When that April with his share suit, the drought of March hath pursed to the root, and bathed every vein in switch liquor, of which vertu engendered is the floor. When Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath, inspired hath in every holt and heath." So see, I can actually spell this. I can sound this out now. It sounds very beautiful, by the way. Now, do I understand it? It'll probably take me a little time to understand, but this is actually doable, right? Like if I committed maybe a week or two to actually understanding, some of the spelling differences and maybe learn some vocabulary, I could figure this out, right? But still, this is somewhat. It sounds better read aloud than it does read on the page. So, for example, if I were just to read this in my head, that is confusing. I'm not sure what that means, but if I read it out loud, it kind of comes together. "The tender crops and the young sun hath in the ram his half course you run." So even then, a little confusing, but it sounds better out loud. So if the King James was written in this English, okay, we can argue for an update. So let's take a look at what is so-called Elizabethan or Shakespearean English, early modern English. We're just going to read the King James in Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Amen. Now, the most difficult part about this, I guess there's two things you could maybe point out. The F's, right? But that's easy enough. Just take the TH away in your head and you know what's being said. The argument that a word becomes unintelligible because of a suffix at the end, I think it's a little ridiculous. Now, the second part would be the thous, but that just means for you, singular, are with me. Thy, your, singular, rod. You preparest, so prepare. I mean, really, this is totally... Now, the question is, do these suffixes and do the existence of the singular you make a work unintelligible? Well, no. Especially if you consider the people that are saying this is unintelligible are people that have the definite article charts memorized in Greek. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know exactly how absurd it is for someone to say that the all the words for the in Greek, for someone to have memorized and known that but not be able to figure this out, I mean, it's very absurd. But even if you don't know Greek and you haven't done language study in other languages, how difficult is it to understand this? I mean, you heard me read it. Was there anything you didn't understand in what I said? And if you didn't understand the thous and the thys, I explained it to you, and now you know. So, that's it. That's the presentation. That's all there is to it. And as a simple exercise in our sanity, we can take a sample of Beowulf, which is Old English, a sample of Chaucer, which is Middle English, look at those and be like, okay, that's something that I can't understand. Old English, totally different language. Middle English, I could see how it became what we speak today, but still, it's out there. It's hard. You have to decipher it, and it would take some work to get through a phrase. Now this, if you're seriously claiming that this is unintelligible, I mean, I think that's more embarrassing for you than it is for anyone else. That's not a badge of honor. That's not something to take pride in. If you have trouble understanding the simplicity of this language, that's not great. That's not great. Now, one other thing I'll end on. What about children? Well, children learn, I mean, at an astounding rate, they learn words. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's picking up new vocabulary every day. We read the King James to her, and she understands as much as her vocabulary understands in any book. So there's the question of unintelligibility, I think, is a silly one, especially when we consider Beowulf and when we consider Chaucer and when we consider the KJV. They are totally different things. And so hopefully this video puts to rest. I mean, the next time someone says the King James we know is written in Old English, look up Beowulf Old English version and try and just tell them, oh, can you read this? Because apparently you can read it. You can read Psalm 23 in the King James, right? So you can read Beowulf. And the absurdity of that claim kind of reveals itself, right? Even in the Middle English, no one makes the claim that the King James was written in Middle English, but if we take a look that Middle English was a development from Old English much closer to modern English, and if we can't understand Middle English, how in the world would we be able to understand Old English? And so, I mean, that's it. That's the video. So, really, the point is that in today's climate, there is a lot of academic dishonesty, a lot of lack of academic integrity. And when you hear that the King James is obviously written in Old English, they have either never read a King James Bible and thus really can't say that it's unintelligible, or they're stupid or lying to you. And we have to call these things out. We have to dispel these notions, because even if you're not a King James reader, even if you read the ESV, you should have a problem with people either lying about the King James or being intellectually dishonest. That should bother you as a Christian who values truth above all things. So the next time someone says the King James is written in Old English, paste them a link of Beowulf or Chaucer. And I'll include these down in the description. But this has been a short little video. I just saw this claim online and I was just like, man, I think people genuinely believe that the King James was written in Old English because they don't know what Old English is, or they haven't thought through the claim enough. And so this video is designed to let us think through the claim, examine the claim. And the claim is absolute garbage, as we have clearly demonstrated. So thank you for watching this short episode of the Young Texas and Reformed podcast. I'm your host, Taylor DeSoto. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and we will see you in the next video.